Tragic incident has been reported from Ghaziabad. A 12-year-old boy lost his life while on his school bus. The child died after hitting his head on a pole when he peeped out of the window of the bus. This tragic incident comes just days after a 4-year-old was mowed down by his own school bus while getting off it near his house in Gurugram. Remember, a similar incident was reported from Tamil Nadu as well a few weeks ago, where an 8-year-old died after hit by a school van. And that's the story that we are tracking for you. Joining us on the broadcast this evening are my guests. We have Meeta Sengupta, Education Strategy and Policy Advisor, Dr. Saranya Jaikumar, member of Tamil Nadu Child Rights Commission, also joining us on the broadcast. Good evening to both of you. Thank you for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Meeta Sengupta, I want to begin the discussion with you. You know, 3 incidents in the last few weeks have been reported from different parts of the country where young children have lost their lives, and all either because of the negligence of the driver or while by being inside the school bus. How will you like to react to these kind of incidents? Can they be just called as one-off incidents, or do you think something needs to be done by the schools to ensure safety of children when they are inside a school bus or they are getting down from it?
There are no words to express the kind of tragedy this is for parents. And unfortunately, this is not new. These kinds of incidents have been happening for decades. And each time a family is completely devastated. This is not just on schools. This is on schools, but this is also on parents, on us as a society, to be able to inculcate a safety culture for our children. We do not emphasize safety enough, especially when it comes to schools and school buses. We have a policing culture. We even have laws called school safety laws. But policing always happens after the incident. Our focus has to be on prevention of these incidents. We do not. What will we do with the CCTV once an incident has happened? Children have lost their lives within schools, outside schools, leaving schools. All of this is caught on CCTV. All of this is reported later on. We have gates and everything. That does not help prevent the incident. We want to prevent the incident. The school's first job, and as parents, as carers, our first job is a safe environment for our students. Learning can only happen when there is a safety culture. Safety first in schools. That's my initial reaction. There is so much more just to say about bringing more safety into our schools and keeping our children safe in many, many different ways. Physical safety, emotional safety, and so much more. But physical safety first, yes.
Clearly, we need to do something to prevent these kind of incidents, because we've lost 3 children over the last few weeks. Dr. Saranya Jaikumar, you're a member of Tamil Nadu Child Rights Commission, and the first case actually was reported from Tamil Nadu where an 8-year-old lost his life because he had forgotten something in the school van. He got down from the school van, went back, and then ran over, and it was a very, very sad and a tragic incident that was reported. What did your investigation find in that particular case, and what lessons can be learned really?
See, when it comes to school bus, we must understand that the Supreme Court has very clearly given guidelines about how a school bus has to be. Very clearly, this was given way back in 1997, and then it was a few more points added to it, I think in 2016 or 17. So very clearly there are guidelines given. The problem arises when the school does not follow these guidelines properly. As the previous speaker said, policing is important, but in a state like Tamil Nadu, where I have almost close to 120,000 schools, including government aided and private schools. And there are more than 40,000 schools with school buses. buses, each school having 4 to 5 buses on an average. So you see the number of buses that needs to be monitored. From the government agencies monitoring the buses are happening. But I think the school also has to play a role there to ensure that they are getting fees, isn't it, to ensure that they keep the children safe in the school. So I think it is their duty first to ensure that the school bus is safe, it is parked in the proper place. So, for this Ghaziabad incident, for example, very clearly the Supreme Court guideline says bus windows must have horizontal grills placed, which means there is no option for the child to put the head out if there are proper grills fitted in the windows. But when there are no grills fitted in place, then obviously such an incident can happen, isn't it? So this is why guidelines are very clear. It's framed by so many experts who given so much of time to to frame these guidelines. I think every word in this guideline in these guidelines matters, and I think school must give importance to this. When this importance is not given, when this is seen as negligence, it definitely attracts Section 188 of IPC. But the punishment is definitely very less. But when a child is hurt in the process, it definitely attracts JJ Act, the Juvenile Justice Act.
Okay, Meeta Sengupta, now guidelines are there, but who really follows it? There are rules for almost everything in schools, in the country, for other issues as well, but who's going to ensure that these are followed too? And similar things are being reported. It's happening again and again. And this only goes to show that rules are there on paper, but nobody seems to be following them. So how do we ensure that when it comes to guidelines about how school buses should be and the rules that school teachers, school principals should follow, how do we ensure that this is also followed?
Absolutely. I mean, the rules and the guidelines exist. They fall through in the implementation, but let us recognize that no school, I mean, for a school, it's an incident. For a parent, it is a completely devastating, this is the end of everything for their child. But nobody wants such an accident to happen. So, for example, I want to ask this question. The Tamil Nadu incident happened last week. The Gurugram incident happened yesterday. How many schools actually called all their school drivers and conductors and school volunteers together and had a session with them, whether it was online, whether it was on WhatsApp, or whether physically, had a session with them and said, okay, this is something that has happened in another school. Let us make sure that this is not possible in our school. How many of them actually ran a session like that? Implementation is about the little things that you do every day to build a safety culture in schools. Safety culture, safety attitudes is about everyday practice. So I know of one school, for example, where in a corridor, in front of a classroom, they have a zebra crossing painted. They have built it into the inbuilt habit where the child can only cross on a zebra crossing. School buses, for example, in many countries are not allowed to reverse at any place where children are even possibly present. So the level of detail that we need to have in our I won't call them regulations, in our guidelines, and the level of scenario planning that our schools have to do and to keep at it. So everybody needs safety training. Children need to go through safety drills just like we have fire drills. But I can imagine totally what will happen when they say, another boring school drill. Oh, another safety drill. Why are the schools not teaching us what they're supposed to and preparing us for getting better marks? Why do they have to waste so much time on creating safety drills? You have to put in the time. You have to build habits of safety. And that starts not just with regulation, that starts with your prevention protocols. Your prevention protocols have to become instinctive for our students. I mean, thank goodness we're not in a situation like the US where you have gun shootings and then the students have drilled themselves into gun shooting protocols. That is extreme. Our children are very fortunate. We don't have to do those protocols, but let us at least have the safety protocols that we need for our scenario. That effort has to be put in. And I would encourage every parent to call up their schools and say, listen, this is how we can do this together. At home, we will do these safety protocols. At school, you do these. And if this does not stop, then I will actually ask for a safety curriculum. And
Right.
we may even need to ask for a separate safety certificate that every school bus driver must have. We have sector skills councils. We can call for QP on this as a specialized skill. Driving a school bus and looking after children is a very specialized skill. We may even need to call for that.
Absolutely. Important points you've raised, and we can really hope that schools follow them now properly. Thank you very much, Meeta Sengupta, as well as Dr. Saranya Jaikumar. Appreciate both of you for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening.